I didn't fall apart when it happened. I remember thinking I should cry or scream or do something that matched the size of what I was feeling. But I just stood there in the middle of the break room with a paper coffee cup in my hand, staring at the linoleum floor, thinking about how my mother-in-law had smiled while she said it. That smile, that's the part I keep coming back to. Her name is Nadine. She's 63 years old, 4'11", and she has never once in 6 years called me by my actual name. To her face, I've always been Beckett's wife, behind my back. And I know this now. I have proof. I was the girl he settled for. My name is June. I'm 31. I've been married to Beckett for 4 years, together for 6. I'm a physical therapist. I own my own caseload. I have patients who drive 40 minutes to see me specifically, and I built that reputation entirely on my own before I ever met her son. None of that has ever mattered to Nadine, not even a little. But I should start from the beginning, because the break room wasn't where this started. This started at a rehearsal dinner in 2019, in a private room at an Italian restaurant in Scottsdale, Arizona, when Nadine stood up to make a toast and spent 4 minutes talking about Beckett's ex-girlfriend. Her name was Courtney. They'd dated for 2 years in college. She was a dental hygienist. Nadine loved her. And apparently their breakup, which Beckett initiated, was a wound Nadine had never quite healed from. I know this because at our rehearsal dinner, the night before our wedding, Nadine raised her glass and said, "Beckett, you have always had such a good heart. You've always known how to love people." Courtney knew that, and whoever you choose to spend your life with is lucky to have inherited what she helped shape in you. The table went quiet. My maid of honor, a woman named Petra. No, her name was Elsa. Elsa looked at me with her mouth open. My dad set down his fork. Beckett stared at his napkin. I laughed. I don't know why. I think my nervous system just didn't know what else to do. Beckett squeezed my hand under the table and whispered, "I'm sorry. She doesn't know what she's saying." But Nadine knew exactly what she was saying. She looked right at me when she said it. She had this small, satisfied curve at the corner of her mouth that she was trying to disguise as warmth. I recognized it then. It took me 3 more years to fully understand it. We got married the next day. It was beautiful. It was a Saturday in October, 82 degrees, outdoor ceremony at a property in the desert hills with string lights and terracotta pots and my grandmother's lace on my dress. My parents were there. My brother was there. Beckett cried during the vows. I laughed again, this time because it was the happiest I'd ever been. Nadine did not cry. She sat in the front row with her reading glasses on and her hands folded in her lap like she was waiting for a doctor's appointment. We honeymooned in Portugal. When we came back, there were 37 texts from Nadine on Beckett's phone, which I only know because he left it face up on the counter. And I wasn't trying to read them, but I saw the notification count, and my stomach did something I couldn't explain yet. The first year of our marriage, I told myself I was overreacting. Nadine was difficult, sure. But so were a lot of mothers-in-law. She called Beckett every Sunday morning, which was fine. She called him every Tuesday night, which was also fine. She called him on my birthday to remind him to do something nice, which I told myself was technically helpful. She forgot my birthday entirely, also fine. She sent Christmas cards addressed to Beckett, Harlow, and Guest for 2 consecutive years, which I mentioned once to Beckett and then dropped, because I didn't want to be the wife who made everything about herself. I was very busy not making things about myself. The second year, she started coming to Scottsdale more often. She lived in Colorado, a 4-hour drive, which she could cover in 1 day when she wanted to. She started wanting to more often. She'd call Beckett on a Thursday and arrive by Saturday. She'd stay in our guest room, use my good towels, rearrange my kitchen cabinets for efficiency, and make comments about my cooking that were just barely not quite rude enough that I couldn't respond to them without looking oversensitive. "This is really interesting, June. Is this how your mom made it?" Translation: I find this inedible, but I'm being polite. You know, Beckett used to love pot roast. His grandmother made it every Sunday. Translation: you are a poor substitute for the women who came before you. Oh, you're working this weekend? That's so important to you. Your career. Translation, Courtney would have stayed home. I started keeping a list. Not because I planned to do anything with it, just because I needed somewhere to put the feelings that had no place else to go. I wrote it in the Notes app on my phone, in a folder I labeled grocery lists, so no one would look twice. 47 entries over 16 months. Dates, times, exact wording. I don't know why I kept it. Instinct, maybe. Some quiet part of me that understood before the rest of me did. The third year was when Beckett's younger sister, Romy, got engaged. Romy is 27, sweet, loud in the way that fills a room rather than dominates it, and she has always been kind to me. We're not close. She and Beckett grew up thick as thieves, and I came into that dynamic as an adult, so there's always been a little distance, but she's never treated me like I was invisible. She actually texted me the day Beckett's family found out about my promotion at the clinic, just a string of celebration emojis in June. That's more than his mother ever managed. Romy got engaged in March. By April, Nadine had planned 4 trips to Scottsdale to help with wedding planning. By June, she had booked a venue, secured a caterer, and started a shared Google Drive folder that I only found out about because Romy mentioned it casually over dinner, not realizing I hadn't been invited to it. There was no malice in how Romy said it. She just assumed I knew. Why wouldn't she? I was family. I excused myself to the bathroom. I sat on the closed lid of the toilet for a few minutes and breathed. Then I washed my hands, reapplied my lip gloss, and went back to the table. I didn't say anything to Beckett until we got home. And even then, I said it as a question, not an accusation. Hey, did you know your mom made a planning folder and I'm not in it? He said he didn't know. He looked uncomfortable. He said he didn't know. He looked uncomfortable. He said he talked to her. I never found out if he did. What I do know is that over the next 8 months, while Romy's wedding came together, catered rehearsal dinner, custom florals, a venue that held 220 guests, a dress that Nadine helped pick out in Denver over a weekend trip I was not invited to. I watched it happen from the outside. Sent a gift for Romy's bridal shower, attended the shower itself, where I was seated at the end of a long table, far enough from Nadine and the immediate family that I could have been a coworker or a neighbor rather than a daughter-in-law. I smiled all day. I made conversation with Romy's friends. I drove home alone because Beckett was at a work thing, and I sat in my car in our garage for a long time before I went inside. I should say, because I think it matters, Beckett is not a villain in this. He loves me. I believe that. But he grew up in a home where Nadine was the center of gravity. And 33 years of that kind of pull is hard to escape even when you love someone who is slowly being crushed by it. He saw things. He chose to manage them rather than confront them. I understand why. I don't think I've fully forgiven him for it, but I understand. The break room incident happened on a Tuesday in February. I work at a physical therapy clinic connected to a hospital system. We share a building, share break rooms, share elevator banks. It's not unusual for people from different departments to end up in the same space at the same time. Nadine had come to town that weekend, ostensibly to drop off some things for Romy's new apartment. She was supposed to leave Monday. She did not leave Monday. On Tuesday morning, she texted Beckett that she was having coffee with a friend near our neighborhood and would he want to have lunch. He forwarded me the text. I said, sure, go ahead. Routine. Normal. Fine. What was not in the text was that Nadine's friend worked in hospital administration, in our hospital system, in the building I work in. I found this out because at 11:47 on a Tuesday, I walked into the third-floor break room to heat up my lunch and found Nadine standing at the counter with a woman I recognized from the administrative offices, and they were laughing about something, and when I walked in, the laugh didn't stop immediately. It tapered. The way laughter tapers when something ends it. June, Nadine said. Not warmly. The way you'd say a word you weren't sure you were pronouncing right. Hi, Nadine, I said. I went to the microwave. I put my container in. I pressed the buttons. Her friend, her name was Gail, I'd find this out later, said, Oh, is this Beckett's wife? That's right, Nadine said. And then, in a voice that was perfectly conversational, perfectly casual, the way you'd comment on the weather, she's the one I told you about. The one who almost didn't get her position here. They'd already offered it to someone else, and then the other girl withdrew. Right place, right time. She laughed a little. Lucky, I guess. The microwave beeped. I opened it. I took out my container. I closed the door. I said, "Have a good lunch." And I left. I didn't look at Nadine's face. I didn't trust what I might do if I saw that smile again. I ate lunch at my desk. My hands were shaking a little, and I told myself it was the cold from the hallway because my office has terrible circulation. I answered 2 emails. I did not call Beckett. I sat with what had just happened, and I let it settle into me fully, like water finding the lowest point in a room. Here's the thing about what Nadine said. It was a lie. Not a misunderstanding, not a misremembering, not a clumsy attempt at humor. A deliberate, constructed lie told to a woman who worked in hospital administration about how I had gotten my position at my place of work. I had almost not gotten my job. I applied, I interviewed, I was selected. I know this because I have the offer letter, the interview notes HR sent as a follow-up, and a voicemail from my supervising director, which I still have, which I saved on purpose, which I have listened to exactly twice, that says, "June, we're so pleased to make this offer. You were our top candidate from the first round." I know why she said it. She had been saying variations of it for years, just never quite so directly. Never quite in a space where it could do real damage. A hospital is a small world. People talk. Beckett's wife got lucky is a sentence that travels. I went home that night and I made dinner and I ate it with Beckett and I asked about his day and he asked about mine. I said, "Fine." We watched TV. I went to bed. I didn't tell him. Not yet. What I did was open my notes app. I scrolled past 47 entries. I added the 48th, date, time, location, exact words, full name of the witness, her department, and role. Then I went to sleep. Over the next 3 weeks, I did some quiet research. Gail's last name was Hartstein. She'd worked in hospital administration for 11 years. She managed credentialing for a subset of affiliated clinics. This did not mean she had any authority over my employment. It did mean that if she repeated what Nadine had told her to the right person, it could affect how I was perceived in professional spaces I hadn't even entered yet. I also did something I hadn't planned to do, which was have a conversation with my office neighbor, a PT named Bridget, who had been at the clinic for 12 years and knew everyone. I framed it generally. "Have you ever heard anything about how I got hired?" Bridget looked at me funny and said, "You mean, besides that, Director Mills basically told everyone you were a steal?" I said yes. She said no. I thanked her and went back to my desk. I felt something clarify in my chest. Cold and clean, like the first breath of actual winter air. I started thinking about the upcoming family event. Nadine had organized what she called a spring welcome dinner, a family gathering at Beckett's aunt and uncle's house about an hour outside Scottsdale. It was the kind of event I would normally white-knuckle through with a smile stapled to my face. Nadine would hold court. Romy would be the star. I would exist in the background, present but not quite there, like a painting no one had chosen to hang. I'd been invited. Technically. Beckett told me about it. Nadine had not texted me directly, which she hadn't done for a single family event in 4 years. This time, I decided to go. And I decided to bring something. My phone had a voice memo app I'd never used for anything except occasionally recording myself practicing presentations. I started using it for something new. In our house, when Nadine visited, she was comfortable. She said things she didn't bother to guard because she decided I wasn't worth guarding against. The weekend before the dinner, she came over to drop off something for Beckett and stayed for coffee. She sat at my kitchen island and talked for 40 minutes while I stood on the other side and listened. I had my phone face down on the counter with the voice memo running. I'm not proud of it. I want to be honest about that. What I did was legal in Arizona. It's a one-party consent state. But I'm not going to pretend I felt great about it. I felt necessary. There's a difference. She said things during that coffee, things about my job. I just worry Beckett carries so much, and June's income is, with a little trailing sigh, things about the house. I looked up what this neighborhood was going for in 2018, and honestly, I'm not sure it was the smartest buy. things about children. And here is where her voice shifted into something I can only describe as deliberate. I hope when Romy has kids, she's close enough that I can be part of their lives. Some grandchildren end up so far away. It's sad. She did not look at me when she said it. I did not say anything. I refilled her coffee. At the spring dinner, I wore a dress I loved. Blue linen, the one Beckett always says, makes my eyes look like something worth staring at. I helped carry dishes in from the car. I said hello to people I knew and introduced myself to people I didn't. I sat at the main table. About midway through the evening, when the food had been cleared and people were on their second glasses of wine, Nadine started telling a story. It was about Romy and Beckett growing up. It was charming. People were laughing. Nadine was luminous in the way she got when she was performing for a room she'd arranged herself. At the end of it, someone, Beckett's uncle, a kind man named Gerald, said, "And June, how are things at the clinic? Beckett says you're doing really well over there." I smiled. I said, "Things are great, actually. The practice has grown a lot." Nadine made a sound. It was small. A soft exhale laugh that communicated something the room wasn't quite meant to catch. Gerald caught it. I caught Gerald catching it. I said, "Nadine, I'm glad you're here, actually. I wanted to address something in front of the people who know us." My voice was level. I wasn't angry. I was just done. I took out my phone. I had the clip cued. I pressed play. 32 seconds. Her voice, my kitchen, the sound of coffee cups. June's income is, and the sigh, and then the part about the job. I had a separate recording. The note I'd made from memory, read aloud in my own voice, of exactly what she'd said in the hospital break room, including Gail's full name and department. The table was quiet. Nadine's face did something I'd never seen it do before, not the smile. Something underneath it, the architecture it had always been holding up, showing through. I said, "I got my job because I was the top candidate in the first round. I have the documentation. I've worked at that clinic for 4 years, and my reputation there is mine. I built it, and I'd like it to stay that way." I put my phone down. Gerald said quietly, "Nadine." She started to say something. I don't remember what it was. I remember that it started with my name, said differently than she'd ever said it before. Without the dismissal, like she'd suddenly realized I was real. I excused myself and went to find Beckett. He was in the kitchen. He took one look at my face and said, "What happened?" I told him. All of it. The break room, the recording, what I'd just played at the table. He stood very still for a long time, and then he said, "How long have you been holding this?" I thought about the notes app. 48 entries, 16 months. "A while," I said. He closed his eyes. Not angry at me. Something else. Something that looked like a person reckoning with the thing they'd been choosing not to look at directly. He said, "I'm sorry." We drove home separately. Not in anger, he'd ridden with his uncle. I'd driven myself, same as we'd arrived. But it felt significant. 2 cars, 2 different speeds at which we each needed to process what had just happened to us. Nadine called Beckett that night. He told me about it the next morning over coffee. She'd cried. She'd said I'd humiliated her. She'd said I'd humiliated her. She'd said I'd blindsided her with a recording. He listened. He said, "Mom, you said those things. June didn't invent them." She hung up. She texted me 4 days later. It was 3 sentences. She said she hadn't meant for her words to come across the way they did. She said she hoped we could move forward. She said she'd always wanted the best for Beckett. Not for me, for Beckett. I read it twice. I didn't respond that day. I didn't respond the next day either. On the 3rd day, I wrote back, "I appreciate you reaching out. I'd like some time and space right now. I'll be in touch when I'm ready." I don't know if I'll ever be fully ready. I'm not sure that's the right question anyway. What I know is this. I went into that dinner scared. Not of Nadine exactly. I'd stopped being scared of her somewhere around entry 31 in my notes app, but of myself. Of what I might do wrong. Of how I might be perceived. Of whether speaking up would cost me something I couldn't afford to lose. What I lost was a fiction. The idea that if I was patient enough, quiet enough, careful enough, I could earn my place in a family where one person had decided I didn't belong. That's not a place you earn your way into. That's a door that only opens from the inside, and Nadine had the key and she wasn't going to use it. So I stopped waiting for the door. Beckett and I are still married. We're in therapy, both together and separately, which is something we probably should have started years ago. He's been doing the kind of looking at himself that is slow and uncomfortable and I think actually real. Some nights I watch him doing it and I feel something that isn't quite forgiveness yet, but might be its early shape. We don't talk about his mother much. When we do, it's careful, civil. He called her last Sunday. I heard his voice from the other room, low and measured, the way it gets when he's managing something rather than enjoying it. I have the voice memo still. I have all 48 entries. I don't look at them often, but I have them. And someday if I need them, I'll know right where they are. I used to think that keeping the peace was the same thing as being good, that staying quiet, absorbing the small cruelties, smiling through the dinners where I was seated just far enough from the center to feel it, that all of that was a form of character. Patience as virtue, silence as grace. It wasn't. I see that now. What I was actually doing was making myself smaller so that someone else wouldn't have to reckon with the size of their own behavior. And the thing about shrinking is that it doesn't protect you. It just teaches the people around you that there's no cost to pushing further. Nadine pushed for 6 years because nothing ever pushed back. I don't say that with bitterness anymore. I say it the way you say something you finally understand after a long time of not understanding it. The cause and the effect were always connected. Her words in that break room, at those dinners, in my kitchen over coffee, none of them happened in a vacuum. They happened because I had built a very convincing performance of someone who was fine. And she believed the performance. Why wouldn't she? I'd been rehearsing it since the rehearsal dinner. What finally changed wasn't anger. Anger had come and gone 100 times. What changed was clarity. The kind that settles in when you stop waiting for someone to acknowledge what they've done and start deciding what you're going to do instead. That's not a small shift. For me, it took years. 48 Notes app entries, and one very quiet Tuesday lunch eaten alone at my desk before it fully arrived. The recording wasn't revenge. I want to be honest about that too. The same way I tried to be honest about the discomfort of making it. It was evidence, yes. But more than that, it was me deciding that my reputation, the one I had built through 4 years of actual work, through patients who drove 40 minutes to see me, through a director who called me the top candidate in the first round, was worth defending out loud, in a room, with people present, that I did not have to wait for a private moment to protect something that had been attacked publicly. There's a kind of intelligence in knowing when to speak and when to document and when to wait. I don't think I was born with it. I think difficulty taught it to me slowly, entry by entry, dinner by dinner, until I had something I could actually use. And there's a kind of integrity in telling the truth even when the room goes quiet, even when the person across the table starts to understand, maybe for the first time, that you have been paying closer attention than they thought, that you remembered, that you had the receipts, that you were never actually just fine. Beckett said sorry. Not perfectly, not immediately, but genuinely. That matters to me. Not because it fixes everything, but because it's real. Romy texted me the week after the dinner. I had no idea. I'm sorry too. That one surprised me in a way I'm still sitting with. Nadine's 3-sentence text still lives in my phone. I haven't deleted it. Not because I'm holding on to it as a weapon, but because it's a record of a moment when someone had to account for themselves. And I was the reason why. I still have the voice memo. I still have all 48 entries, and I still know exactly where they are.